Safety 365.
Welcome back to Safety 365, where our goal is to help you navigate more safely through your daily activities and understand the importance of taking proactive measures to safeguard yourself. I'm your host, Bill Barna, 33-year police officer, a professional security consultant, and a former police academy instructor. Today we'll be addressing the topic of workplace violence, how it's increased in regularity to impact our daily safety. And I'm proud to be joined today by today's guest, John Everett, who has firsthand knowledge of just how real it is. John, thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome, Bill.
A little bit about John. He is actually a survivor of workplace shooting, which left two others dead in 1991 while working for the Veterinary Companies of America in Warren, Ohio, our local area. So, yeah, this stuff does happen, and I think sometimes we always believe that it happens to the other guy in other places, but John is living knowledge right now, living proof that it happens everywhere. John, so glad to have you with us.
Thanks, Bill.
So I'm going to get started with what we like to do, our safety question of the day. What profession is at the highest risk for workplace violence? What do you think?
I would say police officers, maybe off the top of my head.
Well, yeah, I mean, I got to kind of agree with you there. As a former police officer, we had our hands-on moments for sure. In today's world, we're not always well received as police officers, and people tend to confront us quite a bit. And you're not far off. Law enforcement is one of the top for workplace violence. Additionally, mental health workers and emergency room nurses. So
That makes sense.
you think about it, 2 million people annually are affected by workplace violence. I mean, 2 million people.
That's a lot of people.
You're going to work and you're just kind of trying to have your regular day, and this kind of stuff happens. 23% report being bullied via email.
And you see that every day, too.
Right. Well, people are so brave behind these screens. You
Absolutely.
know? You don't have to worry about catching a knuckle to the nose. Kind of crazy. But 1 in 7 employees actually reports feeling unsafe in their workplace. You wouldn't know. Well, when you go to work, you don't think that something like that is going to happen to you.
You don't expect it, that's for sure.
Right.
You're going to work to do your job.
I'm a coworker. We may not always get along. We may have our arguments. We may have our differences of opinion. But all in all, we're still adults, and we're able to cope with things. The costs associated with workplace violence alone are astronomical. The Workplace Violence Research Institute, which there is such a thing, estimated costs of workplace violence to the U.S. businesses at $36 billion a year. That's with a B.
Wow.
$36 billion. So if you want to know why your costs of goods are so high, that's one reason. We're all paying for it. We're all paying for it. And that basically stems from medical and psychiatric care, lost business, lost productivity, obviously increased security costs, and loss of valued employees, because there are a lot of what they like to call zero tolerance policies when it comes to this stuff. So if you have a good employee who's having a bad day and he decides he's going to smack his coworker, he's no longer a good employee. He's gone. So I don't know. Have we as a society become just creatures of habit?
I guess in some
Well,
standards.
I mean, we wake up, we shower, we get dressed, we travel to work, we clock in, we clock out, we travel home, we eat, sleep, and then we repeat the cycle. We expect to be safe in our home and in our car and at work. But it's not always the case, is it, John?
Not even close.
You know, I think your life probably changed on June 27th of 1991.
Absolutely.
We talked about this a little. We made reference to it. Again, John woke up, he showered, he got something to eat, he got in his car, and he went to work like any other day. He prepared his work place and was getting ready to do his daily routine. And, John, I'm going to let you take it from there. You tell me what happened.
As I was loading my truck, a former coworker came into the building, and obviously he wasn't supposed to be there.
Now, he was fired,
correct.
right?
Yeah, a few months prior.
Okay.
And he was in the building, and I didn't understand why he was there and how he got there. So I kind of went about my routine, and
So he walked right in.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how he got in. I think through the front door. I was in the loading area, so I didn't see him actually enter the building. But he came in that loading area where we were. Me and John Coleman happened to be in the same area loading his truck at the same time.
Okay.
I went at some point. He had left that area and went into the lunchroom area with Tracy, who was working with us that day, and I had went in that room, the lunch area, and got my bills for the day, and turned around, and he was standing there. He'd said something to me, and what he'd said was, "Get into the warehouse, or get into your warehouse." And from there, I turned and looked at him, and he said it again. I didn't realize he was standing on the other side of Tracy with a gun in his hand. So he ordered us into the warehouse, and that's where we went in. He'd had us sit down on the ground. He told, "No, I want you to lay down." He called John over at that point, so we were laying in a semi-half circle, and that's
So
what
you're laying face down on the ground,
Yes,
all three of you.
yes, and that's when he started shooting. He shot me 3 times, and in between he'd shot John. Tracy at
So
one
he
point.
shot you first.
Yes,
Well, I mean, again, let me paint a picture for our
Sure.
workers here. John is not a frail librarian type of guy. John is 6'4".
275.
Well, I was going to give you 300, but let's be nice. And John, how old are you now?
I'm 61. I was 30 at the time.
So here's a strapping guy, 6'4", 275 pounds. Not somebody to be messed with on the street. And this guy obviously chose to take you out first.
Yeah.
And he shot you, am I correct, twice in the back? And
Twice in the back of the head and once in the arm. Actually,
twice in the back of the
I'm
head?
sorry, I take that back. Once in the back of the head, twice in my left shoulder area. Yeah.
Okay. So here's a man who's just taken 3 bullets. And next to you is another coworker.
Yes, actually, between me and John was Tracy, and she got up at one point and ran from the area, and he went and got her. She actually went in the dock area and brought her back. And John, after he had shot John, he was what I know now was in like involuntary muscle control. So he looked at him and said, "Oh, you ain't dead yet," and he shot him again.
Okay, so now I'm assuming he's got a revolver.
Yeah, he had a 38.
All right, so now for those of you at home, this 38's carrying 6 rounds.
Yep.
John's shot 3 times. His coworkers also now shot 3 times. There's no more bullets left in this gun.
Correct. Tracy at that point ran back into the lunch area. He told her, he said, "You're lucky, I'm out of bullets." And he chased her into the lunch area, and he proceeded to beat her to death with a folding chair and one of those coffee makers, I think.
Like a Mr. Coffee type of deal.
Yeah. They measured the work area from office to entry area to lunchroom. It was all open through doors. It was like 61 feet, and they said there was nowhere in that area there was no blood spatter, where he just followed her and beat her. That's how bad and how brutal it was.
Okay, now this was just a normal day, John.
Yes.
You woke up, had your Wheaties, had your coffee, and
It
went
was
to
a
work.
Thursday morning. I was at work. I was going to get my truck and do my route that day. That was my plan anyway.
Wow. Workplace violence, it doesn't happen just to somebody else or everywhere else. John, it happened to you.
Right here in Warren, Ohio.
Consequentially, now this isn't the end of it, folks. This isn't the end of it. After being shot 3 times, after his coworker is shot and killed, after receiving 3 shots, a third coworker or a second coworker, third employee there, is chased into a lunch area and brutally bludgeoned to death with a steel chair and a coffee pot.
They said there wasn't a bone in her face that wasn't broken.
While this takes place, after being shot 3 times, my friend John here is able to get to his feet. What happens next?
I made my way out back to the dock area, and at that time, we had a skid that was leaned up against one of the doors. That was our trick way to getting in without the dock area without going all the way back around the building. So I climbed down the skid and made my way out through the parking lot. At this time, I was partway through the parking lot, and I heard my truck that I was loading rev up because it was sitting there running already. And I looked, and it was him. He was in the truck. Well, I make my way across the parking lot. He tried to run me over the truck. I dove over the end of the bridge here on Main Street, where the Mahoning River is. He crashed the truck into the bridge. That's how close he come to hitting me. Over the bridge he comes with he found a stick, and he was trying to poke my eye out. Well, I got a hold of the stick and put my foot on him and got the stick off him. But in between me going to the parking lot, a lady had stopped, and she asked me if I needed help. And she went over the bridge and stopped at a local business over there and recruited some guys, and she'd called the police and everything. So
the cavalry was on the way.
They were on their way, and the sirens started coming. By the time I'm fighting with him with this stick, so he took off and, left, the area.
Well, what a blessing.
Yes.
What a blessing. That's why you're here today. We're glad you are.
Thank you.
Wow. So down the road, this was 1991. Down the road, your assailant was actually put to death for this, correct?
Correct, 2010.
In 2010. 1991 to 2010. This is how long our system took to seek justice.
For a guy that had a known witness, it was beyond the reasonable doubt that he was the guy that did this. It was no...
And the only explanation for any of this carnage is because he was fired a few months prior.
Actually, fired in April, and he came back in June and did this.
Felt like he was done wrong.
Yes.
Came back and was good. And you had nothing to do with that.
Absolutely.
And the other two that were involved had nothing to do with it.
Actually, John got hired to take his place, so John had no prior knowledge to
So
any
he
of
didn't
it.
even know this guy.
Right. To my knowledge, he didn't know.
Okay, this is how it happens. This is why this is so important for us to take note. Any
It
day,
is.
any place, anywhere, and at any time, this can happen. How's your life changed since then? What do you do now that's different?
Well, I get a little. People think I'm funny, but if I go to a restaurant or if I go into somewhere I don't know very well, I always try to sit where I can see the door.
Oh, you're a cop.
Yeah,
My wife complains the same thing. She knows when we get seated at a restaurant, she'll go, nope, my husband's going to sit there.
A lot of times I go to a strange building, I'll look for the floor plan, just to see where exits are and the entrances and
Survival.
It's an escape plan for me.
Yeah.
I just
Well, you know what? And that brings something to our listeners. I mean, I think everybody needs to hear this.
right.
Everybody
Absolutely.
take a second, unless you're in your car, if you're in a workplace and you're listening to this, or you're in your home, take a second to look around. How would you get out?
There's always a fire escape plan. That's what I look for. Some
Sure.
type, look
Are you
look
going
for a
out?
way out. You don't always have something on you personally to defend yourself, and if you can't, get out.
Right. Hey, there's a door, there's a window. Hey, if you got to crawl through a ceiling tile, do that. Whatever it takes. But again, observe your surroundings and figure out a way before it happens. It's about being prepared.
Absolutely.
So that's wow. What was there any security to the facility there?
No. They had a fence around it, but it was that was all open because we were there.
Sure,
of course,
business hours.
Business hours, correct.
So he walks through the fence, walks into the building somehow, and this is
And being a former employee, he knew the layout. He knew exactly where everything was.
now again. This is 1991, folks. Let's just keep the time frame relevant. Do you have a better awareness of like the possibility of threats that are out there now?
Oh, without a
Are
doubt,
you-
yes. It's just amazing that, the school place shootings and stuff we see today,
Sure.
those things, they were always at the top of my mind. And I think I've told you in the past, I've always wrote letters or emails or something to try to get a hold of these people to offer some kind of advice.
Well, and John, that speaks volumes of the person that you are. It's not all about you. While it is, I do believe it's therapeutic for you.
Yes.
To reach out to others who've gone through similar circumstances. It's the nature of who John Everett is. John reaches out to everybody else in the chance of hoping to help.
Absolutely.
And I think that's fantastic. Kudos, John.
Thank you.
Before we move on, I just want to know, did you have any safety training while you worked there?
Not for that per se. I mean, obviously, I drove a truck delivery route, I had that type of thing, but nothing,
Fire drills?
not that I remember, no.
Tornado drills?
No, none of that. It was just
Shelter in place type? Nothing.
nothing that I remember, no.
Okay. Well, again, I want to make reference that it is 1991.
Correct.
So, having said all that, it gives you some idea of John's expertise and why we have him here on the show today. And I can't thank you enough. It's going to lead us into our next segment. You don't know what you don't know. This segment, you don't know what you don't know. I mean, it's pretty much self-labeled. What's causing the increase in the workplace violence?
I don't know. There's so many things we touch on and talk about.
We're 2022. I mean, this happened in 91, so now you've got a lot to feed off of.
I kind of blame social media a little bit.
Okay.
Not that it's the problem, but I think it escalates it a little bit because we're making these people famous, if I could use that word.
Infamous.
Okay. There
Infamous. You go. Yeah. I mean, hey, media, it can kindly perpetuates
Yes.
the violence that we keep seeing. We see it, we hear it, we feel it every day because that's, you know what? That sells.
Absolutely.
That sells. It sells papers in our day, when we used to just read a paper to get our news. And dear
You're
old,
dating us, Bill.
Yeah, well, and news was news.
Yes.
It wasn't
Yes.
tainted. So I think, while workplace violence takes many forms, it's not just somebody coming in and shooting the place up. You have the angered former employees and customers even who could feel wronged, stressed out employees because they're doing twice as much work now than they did before because, a lot of people aren't even coming to work.
Right.
This COVID-19 pandemic, I think that's got a lot to do with what we're seeing now. With this time off, maybe they've got more time to plan.
That could be true. Yeah, I mean, and plus you're bottled up. What is it, cabin fever or whatever you want to call it? People.
Yeah. Welcome to Warren, Ohio,
Yeah.
where we see the least amount of sunshine anywhere in the nation. So yeah, you're bottled up. You get that cabin fever, and but this COVID-19 said you get to work remote. You get to be away from everybody, and for those people who did feel stressed out or wronged, you've got more time to plan on what you're going to do. I hate to speculate what could be coming down the pike.
Right. I'm with you because, like I said earlier, you see all these shootings, especially with the schools. It's close to my heart, but anywhere it happens, it looks like it's escalating. It hasn't gotten any better since this all happened to me 31 years ago. And it's just scary to think where it's going to go from here, if we don't do something about it.
Well, and that's what we're trying to do here on Safety 365. We're trying to get
That's why
create
I'm
a little
here.
bit more awareness.
That's why I'm here.
So yeah, another factor is your personal life. Hey, I've been married to the same beautiful woman for 27 years now. We've been together 30 plus. It's not always roses.
Never.
Sometimes you have your arguments. It doesn't have to be arguments. You have stressors at home. You've got kids. You've got bills. You've got different things going on. And if you got a house, you know that you're never done putting money into it because something's always going wrong. You can take that to work with you and already have a predisposition that I'm in a bad mood today and it doesn't take much to set me off.
Absolutely.
I think, sometimes there are romantic relationships at work between employees that go wrong. Then you got the lover's triangle that can play into it. So the causes and the cures for this are intertwined. And some of them are here's just a few. Poor pre-employment screening.
Yes.
Or lack thereof.
Nepotism.
Not
to be.
Yeah, cousin Billy.
Yeah.
We're going to bring you in. I know you don't know anything, but guess what? You're a supervisor now.
Yeah. Some of that leads into that. Because people get upset about that.
There you go. Okay, so we talk about pre-employment or pre-employment screening or lack thereof. Stress, just normal stress at work. Disgruntled customers and former employees. If the person feels wronged, they may seek to regain the power they lost and strike back at the company. And like with you, they
Yes.
struck back at the company. It wasn't you.
Yeah, and actually, the supervisor, the guy that fired him, wasn't even there that day. So,
He was on a golf course.
yeah, who'd you take it out on? The
Right.
people you worked
right.
with?
No, I don't know. I say he was out on a golf course. That's my doctor's.
He happened to be
thing
moving
there.
that day,
Right.
but yeah.
Right. Luck of the draw there. Lack of an employee assistance program. When I talk about an employee assistance program, where there's a neutral party for a person who feels wronged to go ahead and talk to that person. So I've been working with John, and John's really, got on my nerves, and I'm about ready to blow. I can talk to, Steve, who's in the employee assistance program, and he's just going to be like a neutral party. He's going to be Canada for us. Hey, I can talk with him, let him know, and he can kind of diffuse the situation.
Sure.
We can make arrangements so this can settle itself down. Not necessarily a face-to-face between you and your aggressor, but what management can do to keep it from going off. Verbal judo, if I may say, use an old police term. Basically, just being creative with your words, so you don't, fighting with your words, so you don't have to fight with your hands.
I mean, we spend more time with our coworkers sometimes than our own family. So
Absolutely.
That's some of it too.
Guys of our era, again, I'm 57. I have worked many doubles in my time,
Yeah,
many extra shifts. That's how you got ahead. You made the extra money.
sure.
So, I mean, you are there with your coworkers more than you're with your family. So, the last part of that is two things. One, denial. Companies will deny that there's any problem going on and that nothing is ever going to happen there. At your workplace, nothing is ever going to happen. It's never happened, therefore it never will. If it's never happened, it just means your odds are going the other direction if you're not doing anything else.
I'll touch on that a little bit. Tracy had talked to the boss, and he did know that there was a problem between him and her. Us truck drivers didn't necessarily know that, but she was working with him every day in the warehouse area.
Gotcha.
So she was kind of aware of that, and I found out later that there was being reported and nothing was done about it.
Well, there you go. Case in point, denial. We're not
Yes.
going to have it here. Nothing's going to happen. Just let it
Correct.
go. It's
Correct.
going to be fine. So definitely a recognizable hazard.
Sure.
Well,
sure.
for those of you out there in the workplace, there is an agency out there that mandates you're allowed to be safe in your workplace setting. It's called OSHA.
Yes.
Have you heard about it? It's the Occupational Safety and Health Agency. And actually, believe it or not, President Nixon signed this in December 29th of 1970, the OSHA Act, which gave federal government the authority to set and enforce safety and health standards for most of the country's workers. How about that? Old Tricky Dicky.
Yeah.
He actually did something, and he is not a crook. It provided a safe workplace free of serious hazards. It helped to find health and safety hazards. If they existed, it helped to eliminate and minimize them. And if workplace hazards could not be eliminated, it provided employees with adequate safeguards and protective gear at no cost to them. Essentially, this was your duty of it as an employer to make sure your workers had a safe place to work, free from harm. So as you're listening to this, if you're listening to us in your office right now, if there's something that you don't feel safe about, or if there's an employee you don't feel safe about, you need to say something. You are protected. In 2017 now, OSHA released a directive titled Enforcement Procedures and Scheduling for Occupational Exposure to Workplace Violence. Yes, I had to use that syllable by syllable, but Google it if you have to. In order to start implementing, it said to OSHA inspectors, in order to start implementing proper workplace training for violent events, the courts and OSHA alike, the courts and OSHA alike hold employers responsible for preventing workplace violence under the General Duty Clause.
Please, if you feel this way, say something. Talk to somebody. Do something. Don't let it get out of hand before it's too late.
You're not going to be harmed. Your job is not in jeopardy if you say something because you're
protected.
You're fearful of your surroundings. You are protected, absolutely. So why are we so slow to react? I mean, I got to ask you. This happened to you in 1991. Now, the first major thing for me to remember when I think of mass workplace violence would be like Columbine,
Yes, that was.
and that was April 20th of 1999. All right? 12 students, one teacher were killed there by 2 students. In 1999. So 18 years later, OSHA decides that in 2017, hey, you know, we might want to act on this.
18 years and how many people?
Right. What's the body count in 18 years?
Yeah,
Right?
I don't like that term, but yes, you're correct. It's astronomical that compared to even one person, that it took that long for something to be.
Why are we
done.
so slow to react to protect our employees? Look at it.
Our most valuable assets are students. You know, that's our future. What are we doing?
Right. And who's teaching them? You've got your teachers,
Right.
and you've got your staff, your administrative staff. So it's their workplace.
Absolutely.
But you're right. Using Columbine in 1999, but 18 years later, they decided they're going to put this in and hold the employers accountable for workplace safety. Just some quick numbers. In 2000, there was 1 active shooter incident and 7 casualties. In 2000. In 2005, there were 9 active shooter incidents and 51 casualties. 2010, 26 active shooter incidents and 86 casualties. Now wait for it, here's the whopper. 2017, that's the same year OSHA came out with this, 30 active shooter incidents, 729 casualties. Wow. Talk about a
amazing.
knee-jerk reaction,
Yes.
right? We'll wait till it gets really bad before we start doing something. Don't wait until the boat is full of water. How about when you first see the whole spring up, that you start doing something? This is the FBI concluded between 2000 and 2018, 43% of the incidents occurred in business locations. Okay, so nearly half of these are in a business location, and yet it still took them 18 years to wrap their heads around it and say, we need to do something.
And why? Because it's so easy. People, there's no safety in
Only 20, almost 21% occurred in the educational facilities, schools. So nearly double the amount in workplace settings. And OSHA was slow to jump on the bandwagon and say, we got to do something. But so what have they done? I know Ohio schools right now, they require 3 safety drills annually and 1 drill for faculty and staff just to understand what's going on. There's 1 mandated lockdown or shelter in place, and the others are evacuation type drills. So the schools jumped on it right away. I mean, the schools have done a wonderful job. Credit to our fire agencies too. Man, they jumped on. We hadn't had a school fire since 1958 or casualties.
nice.
Because they jumped on it and put sprinkler systems in and alarms and fire extinguishers and fire drills. They've done it all. They were very proactive. We're very reactive when it comes to workplace violence. But kudos to the schools and the fire departments. They've done a great job. It just begs to ask the question, how many casualties or deaths could have been prevented if we acted sooner?
I chuckle, but the numbers got to be staggering. I mean, I'm baffled actually. I don't have a word there.
Yeah, how many lives we could have saved? How many lives we could have changed?
If it's just one, then we're doing something right. But
Absolutely.
unfortunately, we're not at that point yet. And hopefully, this today will help open some eyes.
Well, the whole catalyst for this is to try and get us to be more proactive and less reactive to things. By the way, 2020, there were 40 active shooter incidents, 38 killed, 126 wounded. Let me just throw that in there for good measure. So I don't know. But the schools actually changed things around 2015. They went from one drill to 3.
Is that near the time of Sandy Hook or?
Real close. Yeah, real close.
It's got to be close.
Yeah. Okay, so we've kind of outlined the good, the bad, the ugly. It's going to take us right into our next segment called Reaction Time. This is basically where we say, all right, how are we going to react to what we just heard? Perpetrators of workplace violence usually have one of these motives. Either they want to achieve notoriety and fame, They want to bring the world's attention to a personal problem. They want to avenge a perceived wrong, or end is the personal plan, end the personal pain. It's his personal plan. Listen, I want to go in there and I want you to take me out. We see a lot of this with suicide by cop.
I was just going to say,
People that want to raise their guns, they're empty guns, and the police have to defend themselves because they don't know. It's staggering. I mean, we've looked at some of the ones just recently. The San Jose, California, there was a rail yard shooting. An employee went in and shot 9 dead. Indianapolis, Indiana, FedEx, 9 dead. Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a Coors plant, 5 dead. It just keeps piling up. This isn't going away. So what do we do to make it better, to push the envelope to the employers, to make the employees feel safer and prevent workplace violence? We hold the employers accountable and demand safety.
I think there's a lot there. The costs are probably astronomical, but there's got to be more security of some type, whether it's a bolo stick or something to that end.
Well, training and drills,
yes,
awareness.
Get people educated in what to look for, especially your front line, whoever's manning the door or the perimeter or something, to prevent these people from coming back. You're looking for this guy, or especially if it's an ex-employee or something that's disgruntled.
Something as simple as keeping all the exterior doors locked.
Correct.
Where you got to buzz in or key fob in, you have to be able to be permitted in. You can't just walk in.
Yes.
Off the street. Maybe we need to create more of a zero tolerance policy. Listen, you act in a threatening manner towards anybody, you're gone. You have a problem with somebody, all right, we'll do the EAP thing, and we'll talk it out and get it resolved. But if you raise your hand to somebody or threaten somebody,
yes,
you're gone. There's enough jobs. There's enough people out there looking for jobs. We'll find someone.
Yeah, there should be a zero tolerance policy for stuff like that. It's just out of hand,
If it can happen once, it can happen a second time.
Right here in Warren, Ohio.
Right here in Warren, Ohio. It happened. Address unusual behavior as it happens.
Sure.
John's coming to work lately, and he's muttering things. I see he's got sketches of knives and guns. I don't know what's going through his head, but he's not the same John. His hygiene's shot. He's not as social as he used to be. We need to address this.
And that's part of education, showing people what to look for. Looking back now, I know this guy was not happy at work, but, he got fired.
You didn't see it at the time.
No. But looking back now, thinking about it, of course, 31 years later now, but there was little signs of things that happened preceding his firing.
Hindsight's always 20/20, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Oh, man. That's an old saying. Dating myself again. But I think creating an emergency plan, critical incident drills, practice. The more you practice, you build that muscle memory. So when things do happen, hey, we can shelter in place. The kids in the schools are doing it. They know what the lockdown drills are. They know what the evacuation drills are. So,
you and I have talked before, but the people listening haven't heard this conversation, but you in law enforcement know this, and I say it to people all the time. I said, don't wait until something like this happens to you, because I'm going to tell you from personal experience, you do not know how you're going to react to something like this until it happens to you. So yes, as silly as it may sound, practice going to that exit, practice what you're going to do that day in case something does happen. Yeah, it may humiliate you a little bit, but you know what? Trust me, you're far better off doing something like that than you are going through something I went through and living through it for 30 years plus.
And it'll never go away.
No, it don't. Trust me.
Yeah, that's something people don't realize either.
Education.
It doesn't
practice.
just happen and it's gone. You carry it with you. Having been in law enforcement for 33 years, there are things out there that are going to stay in my mind, and I see them every day. They don't go away. This kind of trauma will stay with you.
Absolutely.
So how about if you can avoid this kind of trauma and never have to worry about it? You're so much further ahead.
You're educated. You know what to do. And this, so I said, law enforcement, unless you're trained to go through something like this, you don't know how you're going to react. And it may save you. It may save somebody else. It may save you a lifetime of anguish
Absolutely.
on the other end.
Absolutely. I don't know. I kind of reflect a little bit there. I look at it, and because I carry this stuff in my head, I was joking. I had 3 boys, and they all asked about becoming a police officer at one point. So I had to tell them, well, you'll never get into police academy. I said, what do you mean? What are you talking about? I'm like, well, because you're drug problem and you're a thief. He's like, Dad, I don't do drugs. I'm not a thief. I don't steal. I said, that's not what I'm going to say.
Yes.
Because you're never going to have to get in there. I don't want you to see what I've seen or have to experience what I've experienced. God bless the men and women of law enforcement that are out there doing the job. Let me say that right now. Even though I'm retired, I'm still on your side, and we'd be lost without you. We need you more now than ever.
I agree wholeheartedly, Bill. Obviously, 30 years old, I didn't have a lot of thought about that until I went through what I went through. And just in talking with those guys, I became good friends with a lot of those guys that handled my case. And ever since then, I'm like, how do these guys do this day in and day out and live and think about this all the time? I just, my hat's off to them. It's just, I had a little small part, in this thing we call life, and they do it every day.
Yeah, it's you get to see people at their very, very worst, but you have to compartmentalize it. It doesn't go away. It's like that neat pair of shoes you bought and you wore once because you thought they were great, but you don't want to get rid of them. You just put them in the back of the closet. That's kind of what you do with the bad stuff. I'll visit it when I need to visit it, but right now I just keep on moving on.
We're all human.
We're all on this earth together, and we got to learn to get along. But that's going to take us into our last segment. Safety 365 recap. We're going to be reflecting back on some of the lessons we learned in today's episode. Just a quick brush up. Remember that workplace violence, all of these costs are passed on to the consumer. So every time it happens, you're going to be paying it. Whether you're part of that or not, you're going to be paying it. OSHA in 1970 was a great thing. It came out, and we started talking about the employers being a little bit more responsible, having to provide a safe workplace. Really want to emphasize the employee assistance plan. If you're an employer and you're listening to this, and I hope you are, if you don't have a neutral party, a Canada in your organization that somebody can go to with problems, start one. Create it today. And if you're an employee listening to this, be that person. Volunteer to be that person, because what you do might save a life.
Where I work, I don't want to mention where I work, but they actually have an outside counseling company that employees can go X amount of times a year. So, excuse me, you can go and talk to somebody if you do have a problem or said problem for anything.
I think that's fantastic. I know they offered that in the law enforcement world as well. However, many police officers, we all had the mindset, and I don't speak for everybody. I speak for myself. We were immortal.
Sure. Because
we waded into trouble and we came out every day and we went home. So if I go to seek counseling, that's a chink in my armor. That's Achilles' heel. Somebody's going to know. Even though it was anonymous, in your head you always thought, that somebody else is going to find out. So we need to work on that too, because our first responders, obviously, they deal with a lot of trauma in their workplace, and they need to unpack that baggage.
That's kind of what I alluded to earlier about the humility of going and talking to somebody or educating yourself and doing that drill or whatever. And that's part of it. You and I grew up in the old school ways where, we're men and tough guys. You got back up and went back in the fight,
Yep.
But
rub some dirt on it.
You know what? That's old way of thinking, and there is a new way of thinking, a better way of thinking, is get education, get help if you need it. It's only going to help you and the people around you.
Right. I couldn't have said it better. There are a lot of things I don't like about this generation now, but hey, there are some things that have our perks.
There's a lot of improvement.
Maybe we'd have been better off if we had that back then.
Sure.
But I don't know. We'll just rub some dirt on it, suck it up, and keep on going.
That's the way we're taught.
So let's know that, again, we're all paying to this bill $36 billion annually. We know that workplace violence is a recognizable hazard, and safeguards must be put into place to protect the workers. Most importantly, I think, establishing a secure facility limit access to your employees from somebody on the outside, from a disgruntled employee, a fired employee, or just somebody on their way down the street and decided you were the perfect target. I know back in the day, remember we were going postal. I remember
Yes.
guy
That
showed up
was
at
a
McDonald's or whatever.
That was a relatively new term when I was,
Right.
this all happened to me, I should say.
Right. Now it's all mass spree shooting. Mostly demand that your employer create and maintain a safe working environment for you and for your coworkers. The courts and OSHA hold your employer responsible under the general duty clause. Understand that. Use that to your advantage to keep yourself safe. I don't know. I don't want to see this stuff happen anymore. Hopefully we made an impact on somebody today, gave them a little bit of information that they can use to be safer in their workplace and in their life in general, because you and I think alike. We don't want to see anybody go through what we've gone through.
God, no.
And it's only by the grace of God we're sitting here together. And I thank so much. So thankful. Well, when we're looking ahead here, our next episode is going to deal with kind of, are you worried while you worship? We're going to talk about church safety and security, because that seems to be another budding topic that's sprouting up in the United States. Before I sign off, I would like to say a special thanks to our show sponsor, Bolo Stick LLC, the door barricade device, providing safety and security to homes, schools, churches, and business locations across 42 states in the United States and internationally in 6 countries. Visit them at www.bolostick.com. And as always, thank you to the Trumbull Career and Technical Center for making this podcast possible. And thank you, John Everett, for sitting down with me again. Always a pleasure. Always good to see you. And I'm sure we'll do more together at some point.
We will, Bill. And thank you for having me, and I appreciate the opportunity to help educate and make people more aware of their surroundings.
Well, don't go too far, because I've got plans for you. So,
I've heard that before.
For Safety 365, I'm Bill Barna, reminding you to be aware, be proactive, and stay safe.
Safety 365.